All right, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk all about how we can end compulsions, our compulsive behavior, whether it's an addiction or a bad habit, anything in between. Obviously, biting your nails and having a heroin addiction are two very different things. And the more severe of a compulsion we're talking about, obviously, it does get more complex. But today, I want to begin to lay a foundation that you can start to use right away in changing how you relate to these things. And even if you do have a major compulsion or an addiction that it might take more of a process for you to find healing. What I'm going to teach you today has been the result of me dragging myself out of the darkness and now having worked with a lot of people to help them. And this is going to be a little crash course that I hope will revolutionize how you think about your compulsive behaviors and get you on the track toward healing. And hopefully, you're going to learn things here today that you've never heard of before, but that are grounded, make total sense, and are going to inspire you to keep moving down this path. That's what we're here to do. That's what I love to do. And if you're interested in learning this kind of stuff, I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel. Leave me comments, leave me your questions, because I'd love to answer them in future videos. And of course, drop me a like on the video. It's a new channel. I'd really appreciate your help. Chances are, if you have a big compulsion or a big addiction, that you have a lot of lesser ones as well. And by processing and working through those lesser ones, guess what? You're going to free up space to create healing for those bigger ones as well. Every time you heal a compulsion, you are taking something that was taking up a lot of space, time, energy, and resources in your life and freeing that up for something else. What is that? It's your true self. It's the true expression of who you are, what you really want, what you really care about. And living from that place is really important if you want to get unstuck in life, whether it's lose a bunch of weight, heal your relationships, find romantic love, or achieve success in your career, work life, ending toxicity, all that great stuff. At some point in every single one of those journeys, you're going to find a compulsive need to act that we want to let go of. So let's start by breaking down what a compulsion is. Whatever bad habit you have, you probably have a lot of judgment and shame and a lot of piled on feelings about it. Let's start to strip away the subjectivity and just look at this objectively. You're a human being who's doing a thing that a part of you does not want to do, right? And in this case, let's just assume that the part of you that doesn't want to do it is your true self, the part of you that actually cares about your well being, the part of you that can recognize that this compulsion is taking more than it's giving you. Let's just see it objectively. It's a thing you're doing that a big part of you doesn't want to do. This implies that part of you does want to do it. And if we can identify that, hey, the part of me that doesn't want to do it feels like the real me, it feels like the good me, then it's easy to then project without even realizing you're doing it, this bad me onto the part of you that wants to do this action, this compulsive action, bite your nails, eat food emotionally, smoke, whatever. And once you go down that path, man, it's a slippery slope because you can see that, hey, this is taking from me. It's not just robbing my health or my well being, it's robbing me of my self trust because every time I take this action, even though I don't want to do it, it's making me face the reality that there isn't just one me. And the me where I really invest more of my identity, my true self, isn't in control. So I'm scared. Anytime you have a compulsive behavior, realize that it is making you scared. It is freaking you out. So our response to this fear, which is based in our lack of control, is to try to control. What are we trying to control? The bad part. So we get into this war where we are trying to control this aspect of ourself that is bad. Both of these things put us powerfully out of alignment with a whole unified being. And you will find that so much of your compulsive behavior originated out of these divides to begin with. So psychological harm happens, wounds are created, psychological divides occur after that point. This is one of the things that happens as the result of developing a survival mechanism. So the survival mechanism, the compulsion, is the result of a divide to begin with. So when we try to fix it via control and blame and basically starting this inner war, we're just deepening the divide. So when we try to fix compulsions, especially the way we want to do it intuitively or in alignment with what our culture teaches us about, oh, you're all sinners and you're a lazy piece of crap. You got to knuckle down and do the right thing and don't do the bad thing. And if you do, that means a bunch of bad stuff about you. And there's just this cascade of judgment that causes us to stay stuck in this context of inner warfare. So realize that we're dealing with the mental health or the emotional equivalent of what would occur in the body as a break, right? A broken bone. If you walked up to somebody on the sidewalk and saw that they were unable to walk, and you just said, why don't you get up and try walking? Have you tried walking? They would be like, yeah, I tried that. It doesn't work. But when we're dealing with things like compulsions, we treat people in such a way that we assume that, oh, you must not be really trying. But the more those people try, the more they deepen the compulsion when they're stuck in this context of inner war, because the more effort they put into fixing it, the more harm they actually end up creating. It's pretty cruel to do that, because you can imagine if somebody crashed their bike and their leg is broken and you're like, hey, get up. Don't you want to be good? And they're like, yeah, I really want to be good. Thanks. And then they get up, they try to walk, and then they fall down. And you're like, ugh, gosh, you must really love being broken. And this is how we treat people with compulsive issues or mental health issues or addictions or bad habits. So I want you to start to treat yourself the way you would treat somebody who you happened upon laying on the sidewalk with a broken bone. You wouldn't meet them with judgment. You would go, whoa, I can tell that this person is experiencing a malfunction, a major malfunction. Something's broken here that they need help putting back together. And then we do a couple things without even thinking about it. We would encourage that person to get help outside of themselves. When you break a bone, we don't expect you to just walk it off, right? You go to the doctor, and the doctor helps you put it right. The doctor helps you realign the pieces so that everything goes back together the way it functions best. And notice the doctor doesn't heal the bone, the doctor just helps you put things into alignment again. And the healing really takes place by itself. And in the same way your body will heal itself if given the opportunity, so will your psyche, so will your mental and emotional world. You may just need a bit of help putting things back into alignment. This is a big part of what I do in my coaching program. It's especially aimed at people who are emotional eaters, but when I'm helping somebody lose 200 pounds or more, we end up encountering a lot of other compulsions along the way, and we treat them all the same with compassion and understanding and this lens of healing rather than warfare. And if you're interested in that, you can email me, John, John, at oakesweightloss.com, OAKES, weightloss.com. So this brings us to the help that is on offer. Most people, when they're having a bad habit, they look toward discipline, self-control, or trying to build new habits. And whether they're doing this through formal therapy or through some kind of online program or following an influencer who they admire and who is espousing these things, they're really trying to use force to put things back into alignment. And that's rarely effective. So let's use the case of emotional eating to give you an example of why these things break down. Self-control is the function of a healthy mind. This originates from our executive function, which is a limited reserve of willpower, basically, that we all have that lives in our prefrontal cortex, but it is exhaustible. This is why a lot of people's compulsive behaviors tend to happen later in the day. Why? Because that's when your reserves are running low. And ideally, through restful sleep, they refill. But people who have compulsive issues often have a lot of stress and anxiety, which means they don't sleep as well, which means these never really get fully refilled. This is even more true for people with full-blown PTSD, chronic PTSD, childhood PTSD. It's also true of people who are neurodivergent, people with ADHD, people on the autism spectrum. So when we tell people to willpower their way out of these issues, we're telling them to use a gas tank that never gets full for them. And if they were to use the small amount of willpower they have to fix this one issue, well, then they wouldn't have willpower to function in the rest of their day. Secondly, we need to understand that the operating system of our mind shifts radically in times of stress. We go from using our big, beautiful, powerful brains where we can build habits. We can change one habit from a negative thing to a more healthy thing, right? And that's an art form in and of itself. But habit change requires cognitive function. And what happens when you get really stressed out, you go into fight or flight. The rise of fight or flight causes a decline in cognitive function. So you literally can't think as well, right? You're not going to be as smart. You're not going to be as with it and connected to your true self when you are in a panic or in times of stress, high anxiety. The part of your brain that has a sense of self, a connection of self, a positive self concept or confidence, it goes dark. The part of you that understands the relation of time, the passage of time, that goes dark. The part of you that feels connected to the divine or anything higher or bigger than you, that goes dark. So you end up feeling cold, alone, scared, and with one option, your compulsive behavior. So if you're trying to lessen a compulsive behavior, you have to realize that this is only arising in times when your brain is in a big shutdown. So trying to use cognitive tools like reframing or mantras is massively less effective at the moment when you need it most. This is where grounding and acceptance become superpowers as you work your way out of this state, right? Because it's not so much the compulsion that's the issue, it's the override switch that's causing you to fall into fight or flight. The compulsion is just one feature of your fight or flight system. Your particular compulsion, while you may share it with other people, that's your unique strategy that your mind developed to keep you safe in times of trouble. Now, here's the trick with that. In a time when you were truly powerless, your brain came up with the next best thing to actual safety and actually having your needs met. That's why you bite your nails. That's why you eat food that you don't really need. That's why you smoke cigarettes. That's why you drink. These were never true solutions, right? These were the things you clung to because you didn't have a good solution. The brain went 2 + 2 = 5. That's as close as we're going to get. So we're going with it. And because of the powerlessness and the heightened state where this was installed, we feel like it's life or death, that we cling to this thing that actually doesn't make any logical sense. And what compounds this fact is that often we were children when we developed these mechanisms to begin with. So logic was even less a feature of our minds at that time. Children are highly imaginative. They make connective links between things that don't really have causation. This is part of the beauty of how imaginative and creative children can be. They aren't bounded by logic. That means that when we create survival mechanisms in childhood, they aren't bounded by logic either. So when you're an adult trying to logic your way out of a survival mechanism, it's going to be very frustrating because it won't work. So we want to understand that two things are true. And as we ground ourselves in reality and accept reality as it is here in this present moment, these two main lies are going to dissolve. And these are the lie that what was happening then is happening now. Okay. So let's say you had an abusive parent and they would come home drunk and they would yell, and you would hide under your bed and bite your nails. Now, when you get super stressed out and that reminds your brain in any way of that abusive parent, it goes into fight or flight. And then it decides, okay, how are we going to operate in fight or flight? How are we going to fight or flee or freeze or fawn? And based on the situation, it will select a survival mechanism and it'll say, okay, we're going to hide somewhere away from the sight of other people and we're going to bite our nails, or we're going to drink, or we're going to eat, or we're going to smoke, whatever. And if you can create a space of grounding and acceptance in this moment, you can see, okay, I feel like I felt when I was 8 and dad came home drunk, but I can look around, use my senses, use the power of reality, inescapable reality, to help me realize that, oh, as shitty as I feel right now, and as badly triggered as I am because my boss got mad at me, this is not that. Okay. And obviously, this is a process that takes time, right? This is a big part of what I help coach people through. This is a big part of what it looks like to heal from trauma, is to be able to separate the triggers from the associations our brain makes because of them. And instead of having to avoid your triggers, what you can learn to do is truly defuse them, right? Completely dismantle them. And it all starts and ends with presence to reality as it is. So get into your space, get into your body, get out of your head, right? Feel your feet on the ground, feel your butt in your chair, look around you, notice the objects around you. When we're going into compulsive behavior, we are dissociating. So by getting really present just to the objects around you, you are pulling yourself out of that dissociative state, which is going to make it much, much easier for you to, maybe not this time, maybe not the next time, but eventually redirect your energies away from the compulsive mechanism towards something that actually serves you. And sometimes I'll look at something and then I'll be like, wait, did you really see it? Are you really in the room? And I'll look at it again and focus and really take it in until I'm like, oh, okay, I'm actually seeing it. I'm actually here in this space with this object. The next lie that we want to break down is that the compulsive behavior is a solution for whatever is stressing us out. So we want to sit with the behavior of biting our nails or eating food and notice how it doesn't actually change reality. If my boss is mad at me, going to the break room and hammering cupcakes that Debbie brought, that doesn't make the boss not mad at me. This is just creating a temporary reprieve. And there's no logical reason why cupcakes create comfort. Yeah, we could say that sugar or whatever, there's chemicals, and eating tends to provide a baseline comfort. But apart from that, there's no real connection between eating a cupcake and how that's going to somehow protect me from the ire of the boss. Cupcakes aren't going to protect me. This is really a story that I've been telling myself for a very long time. This is a security blanket, and it's not a very good one. And again, it can take a long time sometimes to break these apart to where you can really see that, oh, yeah, I could eat a cupcake, but I totally see right now that's not going to help this situation. And eventually you will have better tools. So you can learn to delay your compulsive behavior, right? We're not going to try to control it. We're not going to try to stop the freight train. If you're going to eat the cupcake, you're going to eat the cupcake. However, the way you go about that could massively improve your chances of letting this go at some point. So I said before that grounding and presence are really important. Be grounded and present while you eat the cupcake, because all compulsion is based in delusion. And delusion comes apart when we have a shift in awareness, where we go from being situated in that delusion to having knowledge or understanding or experiences, mainly experiences, that shift our awareness away from the delusion and get us grounded in reality. This is the essence of mental health, moving from delusion to reality. And the way we do that is not through force, it's through shifting our awareness from delusion to reality. This is why reality is not a cold hard smack to the face. It's not a cynical thing. It's not a bad thing. Reality is truth, and truth sets us free. When you realize how crappy it is to be stuck in delusion, you realize that reality is an escape route, right? It doesn't matter what the situation is in reality. By accepting reality, you're moving out of the delusion. And even if reality has some features that you don't prefer, being in a reality you don't prefer is a position of power, massively so compared to being in a state of delusion where you are truly powerless. And it is a very powerless state to sit there hammering cupcakes thinking that it's helping you when deep down it's not. And it's really just making things worse. And there are lots more techniques. I teach a lot about this. If you're interested, I'd love to talk to you more about it. I'd love to help people with this. I have lots of resources for you and coaching programs and stuff like that. But I'll leave you with this. And this is a really great mechanism you can use to start to distance yourself from the compulsion and start to have that shift in awareness that's really going to free you. And that's delay. Just delay. Because every compulsion is telling you basically, if you don't do this, you're going to die or something terrible is going to happen. And we want to disprove that. And as we disprove that, that's going to give you the freedom to make different choices. So if you've had a compulsion before, then you understand that there's a component of that compulsion that is urgency. We don't just need to eat the donut, we need to eat it right now. So even if you eat the donut, you can start to dismantle the compulsion by removing the right now component, right? And it starts with what I call just getting your foot in the door. Be present, notice that you're having a compulsion, notice that it's telling you that it has to happen right now, notice that it's telling you that you're unsafe. Even if logically you can tell that you are safe, but your emotional mind is stuck and feels like you aren't, just notice all of that. And notice that voice saying, you need to eat the cupcake right now. And just notice. Don't judge it. Don't fight it. Just notice and say, okay, because you are talking to a part of you that is trying to keep you safe. And when you see that, you're going to have a lot more compassion, understanding, and patience for this stuff, which is going to aid the healing process because we don't want to divide these things. We're not going to lock this stuff away in a room somewhere and keep it in prison, and it's never going to affect us. And we're going to live unblemished lives forever. The only way this ends is by reintegrating these energies into your mind and body so that they can rest because there's nothing wrong. Everything's fine. What happened in childhood is what happened in childhood. Even when you're dealing with stressful things now, these things are completely different. They're not related. And you can relate to your stresses in adult, mature ways that allow you to express the truth of who you are, express your values, and work according to your best interests. So, yeah, when that compulsion comes up, you can just say with compassion, yeah, okay, I see that that's what you want right now. 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. And you will find that you will be able to do it just by being like, yeah, you can have the cookie. We're just going to wait 5 minutes. I just got to do this thing real quick and then I'll get to it. Okay. And just think of this as a toddler throwing a temper tantrum, right? You can delay with a toddler. You can delay with this voice, this energy inside of you. And by just having it wait 5 minutes, what you did in that 5 minutes is disprove the lie that you have to do this and that you have to do it right this second. And so 5 minutes, does that change the outcome of your life? Not really, but it does in a major way. It absolutely changes the trajectory of your life. Because if you can do 5 minutes, the next time you can do 10 and you can push that to 15 and 20. And pretty soon you can say, all right, we'll have the cupcake, but we're going to wait till this afternoon. And maybe afternoon passes and you don't eat the cupcake and you're like, oh man, I totally defused that whole situation. Or maybe you have the cupcake in the afternoon. Either way, you are making progress toward the day when you fully see that you don't need the cupcake, you don't need to bite your nails, you are free from these actions. And all that energy, that fear, that anxiety it was costing you resources, energy, your well-being. It's costing you your sleep, right? And all of a sudden, by letting these things go, we're creating all this space. We have energy we don't know what to do with. We have freedom we don't know what to do with. And we start asking crazy questions like, well, what do I do then? If I'm not just running around in compulsion all day long, what do I do? And that's the most awesome and scary question that a human being can ask themselves from a place of true freedom, because it means that now you get to find out who you really are. Now you get to follow your dreams. Now you get to spend your day doing the things that will take you to places you've truly never been before. The unknown is not scary. I mean, it is scary because we're always scared of the unknown, but the unknown is where all the good stuff is, right? All the things you've been dreaming about that you want to happen for your life, they couldn't happen in those stuck patterns that you've been living in all your life. Now that you free yourself from compulsion and you're freeing yourself from the cycles of trauma or mental illness or whatever stuckness you're in, now you open up this big blank space. And instead of relating to it through what do I have to do? What do I got to do to stay safe? You start asking yourself things like, what do I want? How do I want to create? What do I want to make? What's important to me? And as you start to move in that energy, you're not working from fight or flight anymore. You're working from that big, most powerful part of your brain that when you're there, it doesn't even feel like you're thinking a lot of the time. When I was coming out of my really darkest days, I would do this thing that I called turning off my brain. And come to find out, what was happening was I was just moving from my fight or flight brain into my more powerful cognitive centers. It's like going from driving a diesel truck up a steep hill. It's very loud and stinky, so you know it's working, right? Into driving like a Tesla, where it's way more powerful. It can do so much more, but it's not making as much noise. So this is what happens in play, creativity. What we're moving into very powerful cognitive centers where there's very little drag, and we're able to create a lot of amazing things in those states because of the lack of resistance, lack of getting in our own way, and moving from the most powerful, most advantageous parts of our brain. So this has been a little crash course in what compulsive behavior is, how to understand it, and hopefully I've inspired you and encouraged you that you can heal from these things and laid out a framework where you can understand practically, logically, but also neurologically, behaviorally, and even maybe spiritually, how whether you're dealing with something relatively small like biting your nails or something really big and gnarly like a nasty addiction, fundamentally what we're dealing with has a ton of similarities, and the pathway to healing is going to move along similar lines. So when you let go of the tiniest compulsion, you're not just letting go of a tiny compulsion, you're moving toward the bigger ones. You're basically leveling up in the video game of lessening compulsion. So I hope you took a ton of value out of this. That's all for now. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. John at oaksweightloss.com for all inquiries for coaching. Thanks, and I'll talk to you soon.